Hey guys, this is Donnaleigh, and if you are a tarot reader who is brand new to the Lenormand and you're not quite sure where to go, if you're not quite sure about the difference between these two cards, I want to welcome you to the Lenormand. It's a blast. It is totally different than tarot, so it's going to take your brain way off in this offshoot in a new direction. It's going to be challenging, it's going to be fun, and it's going to be accurate. You will be kind of blown away by some of the stuff that comes through in this. It's kind of like throwing a dart. It's quick, it's sharp, or I say it's like a pie in the face. It's blunt and obvious. It's right there. Tarot is more like a Zen experience, and you can sink into it, you can chew on it, you can really become one with the cards and stay with this one card a long time. Lenormand, you're going to be reading like a book, like a language, words and sentences, and kind of like a message from spirit, really. So let's talk about the differences between these two. This is just a very basic video to get you started. I have a whole stream of videos waiting for you. Everything from basic meanings to single cards, to putting two cards together, then making spreads, and going all the way up to the mother lode of the Lenormand, which is the Grand Tableau, the big one. Kind of the mother spread of everything. But all the little things that you'll be learning, all these little spreads, really make up the Grand Tableau. So if you know how to do all the pieces, all those big cards are going to look intimidating, but you take it chunk by chunk and you'll already know how to do it. So let's learn the small steps first, and we'll take it up. But this right now is not really a tutorial of how to read the Lenormand. I'm going to give you the foundations and the basics, saying what's the difference between tarot and Lenormand, so you can kind of clear out the old tarot hat that you might be wearing and save that for these cards and go right into Lenormand in a new way. Let's do this together. It's a lot of fun. Have a lot of fun with this system. Lenormand is really approached from a completely different type of way of reading. I know with the tarot you can really enter an image. You can probably spend an hour on that one image. You can journal on it. You can look at the way things are facing. You can look at what's going on in their expressions. So two different decks may give you two totally different types of readings. Not with the Lenormand. Pretty much across the board. Whatever deck you get, tower will mean tower, and coffin will mean coffin, and it really doesn't matter what the imagery is or which way anybody's facing, with just a few exceptions, and I'll talk about those. Now, one of the first things that I guess is worth mentioning is there are some cards that are similar. So the tower in tarot we're used to as being an explosive change, something totally new that kind of clears out everything you thought you knew, and it can be a very difficult card. This tower in the Lenormand is not the same. It means more like a business hierarchy. It can mean solitude. It can mean being alone, but it can basically mean like a hierarchy, a big business workplace. Not the same meaning. The same thing goes for, there's a death card in tarot and there's a coffin card in Lenormand. There are some similarities, like it does mean the ending of something. Same here, it does mean ending, but this is more like grief. It can also lead towards something related to illness if it's aside other cards that point to that. But similar, more similar than the tower is, but still different in many ways. The moon card also, this is about illusions. This is not. This is about, some people say it's like the psychic realm, and some people will read Lenormand that way, but basically the Lenormand, it can be like dreams, dream work, night, but it also can mean, yeah, your reputation, how people see you, kind of the face you put out to the world. The sun is similar in some ways in that it's happy, but it's also about energy. It's about putting yourself in the light, and it's about exposure, exposing something. So these are just a few simple meanings. It doesn't have so much to do with the pureness and the new baby and the types of things you'll see in the tarot sun. But it still is that same type of joy. The star card is maybe more similar. It does have to do with hopes and aspirations, but it also has more to do with networking, being seen. A little bit different than this, which is kind of what happens after the tower crashes. Then you are kind of back with the star, and there's some hope. So these two cards have always been somewhat related to me. This is kind of like the calm after the storm, but this doesn't really necessarily happen after any type of shakedown. Probably the last one to mention is that these two look a lot alike, the Ace of Swords, but the scythe is a little bit different. It can be about cutting and pruning away, but it's also about pain, it's about danger, it's about sharp things. So those are the cards that are similar. So you want to kind of remember that, say, if you get the Tower, it doesn't mean something horrible is going to crash down with the Lenormand. Next, let's talk about reversals. So in tarot, if you get a card that's upside down, we call that a reversal, and it shifts the energy. Never read reversals in Lenormand. You don't need to, because they're impacted by the cards beside them. That's what makes them positive or negative. And the tradition of Lenormand does not lend itself to reversals. Let's talk about card positions in Lenormand versus tarot. Now, those who read tarot are very used to having, say, if they have a 4-card position, this card represents, say, your now. This card represents what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what's the likely outcome. So you put one card in each, and each one kind of answers a question. So you can delve into this card, what's happening, for a long, long time. But it doesn't necessarily have any relationship to the other cards, other than if you try to create a situation, this is what is happening, what I should do, and say why they relate. But they're not cards that are really talking to each other. So each spread position has something. The exception to this is I've seen Enrique and Robert Place read, say, 3 cards and say, okay, no, this is facing forward, this one's facing forward, this one's facing this way. And they're kind of using a more organic approach to what's physically happening in the card. Which shapes are redundant in different cards? What are you seeing in all 3 cards that might stand out in terms of a shape or a color? Now, Lenormand does not do that. Instead, what Lenormand does, you don't really read 1-card spreads. Everything is done in pairs, and it's the relationship between these two that create kind of a word or concept, and this becomes the new concept. So if you were to use that 4-card tarot spread, what you would do if you wanted to do that with Lenormand, each position would have to have probably 2 cards, even 3 if you wanted a little bit more, that there'd be a concept for the answer to your question. This is what's happening. This is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. That sort of thing. But really, most people don't read the Lenormand that way. What they do is they'll do a 2-card reading to understand what's happening in terms of just a real short, quick, basic concept. 3 cards is what most people do if they do a small card spread, and this card gives the mood to these 2. This one is kind of the topic. This card modifies the topic, and this further kind of gives like the ending or the overall mood to the 2 cards before it. Now, this happens throughout even the larger spreads. So if you were to see something like a 9-card spread, what would be happening here is you would have many 3-card spreads or even 2-card spreads. So these 2 could be 2 cards that you read together. These 2 could be. These 2. Okay, so whatever's touching something else has significance. But these are also many 3-card spreads. So you've got one here, you've got one here, and you've got one here. Likewise, you've got a 3-card spread here. So the topic, this modifies the topic. This is kind of like the outcome or where it goes. Same thing here and same thing here. But underneath each spread, there isn't so much, this is what you should do. This is what's not happening. It's not quite like that. Instead, there's a language that happens through the cards, and the kind of the language they set up is based on how each card bounces off the one before it. There are also 5 card spreads that look like this. The way these are read more is this is kind of your now. If you think of your 3-card tarot spread of past, present, future, this is probably the closest thing to it. So these are your past. This is kind of like your significator or what's happening or the central topic. This is your future. So these two are read together, and these two. I like to add even more to that and put cards underneath, like this. So these cards kind of become your topic. These are your past, so these interact, these interact. This is your future, these interact. And there are more ways to do this, and I would invite you to watch some of my videos that demonstrate many of the card spread possibilities in Lenormand. But here's the trick. If you know all those little spreads, you will eventually learn about the big mother spread in Lenormand, and it is called the Grand Tableau. And it is made of all 36 cards in one spread, all laid out at one time. Looks daunting to somebody starting, but in essence what you really have here is lots of little spreads put together. And let me show you how. For example, any two cards that are side by side, so if we take these, you've got yourself two card spreads that interact. Okay, so if you know how to do the two card spread, you'll be doing that throughout this. Same thing up and down. Two cards, three cards, and you start reading down that way. Also, three card spreads this way. And so is this. Okay, just like you had the past, present, and future with the 5 card spread, let's pull out a 5 card spread here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now you have a 5 card spread just like I just showed you, but it's already laid down for you. So if someone asks about the man, you find that man, and this is him. Find out there are houses in Lenormand. I'll talk about that in a moment. But then you talk about his future, his past. If someone wants to know about health, the tree represents health. Shift it over there. Take a look there. Okay, now this is just taking a look at the 5 card version. What many people do instead, and what you should do, is look at the 9 cards that are around it. So if you're asked about the man, what is he like, you can take a look and you've got yourself a 9 card spread. These cards say something, these, as this, and this. You can do other types of techniques that my other videos talk about, but basically this Grand Tableau is made of multiple 9 card spreads. You've got over here your tree, so if they want to know about health, we kind of block off just those 9 cards. In this particular Grand Tableau, there's only 4 cards at the bottom. There's none in the last 2 slots. So there's no cards there, so it would almost be like an 8 card spread. But still, you would take a look at what's around it. You can look at the 4 corners of the Grand Tableau. That tells you something. And here's the neat thing about the Grand Tableau. When we think of past, present, future, this is further in the past. Wherever the significator card is, the man or the woman, here's our man. And our woman here is way in the future. She doesn't have future that we can read for this particular spread. And I will have other videos that talk about what to do with those. But this is basically the time flow of then, now, later. But it always has to do with what card you're looking at. So if you're looking at your man, past. Future, this is his present. Even the cards that are on either side are kind of energy that's just coming in and energy that's just beginning to happen, so they may already feel some of the cards on either side of them. So if you're looking at love, you find the heart. Same thing here. You can find out there's your 9 card spread, what will happen around love, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the basic of the Lenormand. If you do a large Grand Tableau like this, you may not even need a question because it's all right there for you. But if you do the smaller spreads, you definitely will want to consider a question. For your daily draws, you can take a risk and just see what happens during the day. But if you really want to know something, you really should have a very clear question and listen carefully to your question and make sure that it's asking what you want to know and is worded very clearly. The depth of a reading with tarot, you can really sink into a card for a long time. For example, 7 of Swords talks about cheating. You can talk a lot about what this means. If there's other cards around it, you can see what's happening. But you can really kind of get into like a psychological sink into the card. For this one, cheating is fox, exposed, and that's a lucky thing. But you're not going to get a whole lot of time to really sink into those because it's like word, 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 and it becomes a unified concept. So these three kind of become what this one is. Where we talked about directionality being important, say for the way that Robert plays, or Enrique reads for tarot. He's looking this way, but he's running away and going that way. He's pushing the other direction. This guy is straightforward. And you can talk about the energies of that in a situation. With the Lenormand, the cards are not directional. So you really don't pay as much attention to who's facing what, who's looking at what. Here are the exceptions to that. There are a few cards that some readers, I don't do this, but some readers do. The Clouds card has typically a dark and a light side. Some decks don't, but many decks do. And whatever is on the light side or the dark side, the cards that are either side of it, it impacts either of those. So it may be clearing out if it's this way, it may be sinking into this if just coming into it if the dark side of the cloud is impacting the card beside of it. Other cards that are directional, some decks with the coffin, not this particular one, but some show draping of fabric over the coffin, and one end might be open, and that creates a directionality for something that may be ending. This is one instance of that, the draping. Other things that indicate directionality. The scythe card, whatever way the scythe is facing, the point is kind of what it's cutting, what is in danger, what is the problem. I don't use these techniques so much, so it's not something that I feel is necessary because I use the time sequence and that tells me what I need to know. Something you would not do, for example, is say, there's our dog card. It isn't tradition for people to say, oh, the dog is looking up at this angle, so whatever's up here is its friend or it's loyal to. That's not typically something that's done in Lenormand. There are very specific cards where the directionality is used. If after you're done the reading, you feel like you want to sink into that and have a little fun with it, go ahead, but really know the rules first before you start doing any of that. Really use the context of the Lenormand language to decipher what you're seeing. It is a very clear language, very blunt, where say two people may interpret, say, one of the kings differently from another person. You get the King of Wands or something, or even Three of Wands. It's a weighting thing, but that may be, seen differently from different people. It could be a yes, it could be a no. With the Lenormand, it's actually pretty clear what it wants to say to you, and if you get a bunch of Lenormand readers in one room, you're going to get a lot of consistent type answers. So those are the basics. Now what I would invite you to do is you want to make sure you know the meanings, just like you do of tarot cards. But tarot, you can be a lot looser. You can kind of go on your own way and do your own thing based on expressions people have and how you think people feel in the cards. Not with the Lenormand. You're not going to be paying attention to the expressions on people's faces, just the meanings of the cards. So I would invite you to check out my videos where you have single meanings of cards, so you know what each ingredient is and what each ingredient means. There are a few meanings for each one. And then I would invite you to see the card combination ones to invite you to explore ways to put two cards together to become a unified concept. It's really these blends that create the magic of Lenormand that does not exist in any other oracle in quite that way. So you can have many, many cards, maybe 9, 10 cards, and you can actually read them pretty quickly because you're putting sentences together up and down and quick. Whereas for a tarot, you can kind of talk about one card for a long time. You can sit there for an hour with 9 cards. Not so much with the Lenormand. You can get maybe a good 5 minutes out of it sometimes. You can go deeper if you want and start a discussion with your client, but you kind of get the grit and the guts basically out of it right at the get-go. In the Grand Tableau, we have the concept of houses. So you see this set up right here, set up with 8 cards across in each row, 4 down, and then an extra 4 at the bottom. It's called the 8 by 4 plus 4 for obvious reasons. Some people put 9 cards across and just 4 rows of those without these extras. Either way is good. The 4 down here, when they're extras, are called destiny cards or fate cards. And they kind of create kind of like a punchline sentence about your reading. As do the 4 corners. They kind of box in the content of what's inside them. And if you think of each position, so if you've got 36 card positions here, this is always the first position or the first house. This spot, whatever card lands in the spot, is always the second house, third house, fourth house, fifth house, same all the way down to the end. 36, 35, 34, 33. So these cards are always the same. Each card has a number on it. So the lilies, no matter what Lenormand deck you use, will always be number 30. The stork, no matter which Lenormand deck you use, will always be 17. Just like in tarot, magician is always 1, high priestess is always 2, empress is always 3. Same kind of structure. Now, whatever card lands on the first house will change, but the house underneath will always stay the same. Just like an astrology chart, we have the 12 houses. The houses always stay in the same spot, but the planets kind of move through them. Picture these cards as being planets moving through this house system. Every time you shuffle them, different ones will land on the houses that are stationary. So the houses that are underneath them can either make a card better or worse, because those same 2 card interactions start to happen. They start working with each other. So if you have, say this is the stork, in its mood, it lands in the house of fish, and that may be a very good thing. Movement of money or finances or abundance, the good things. So things are shifting. But if you had, say, something, if this had landed on a different house, say it was on coffin, if we were on the house of the coffin, which is up here, that would mean the ending of something moving, something stopped, the brakes got put on. If you saw it land on the sun, it would be maybe moving towards something sunny or a vacation or something very happy. So the house underneath it creates more nuances. This is a more advanced technique. I wouldn't ever start trying to do this, but I just want you to know that they exist so that someday when you use this grand tableau, you'll see that there's layers underneath that you can tap into as well. So have a lot of fun with the Lenormand. Experiment. It's done differently. Start a little journal on this. I will put a link below this video so you can see some journaling ideas that will help you get started. And also be sure to check out my website at Donnaleigh.com. That will help you go from beginner to advanced with this little deck that will tell you big stuff. Have a good time with it.